Hey there, streakers. Producing a podcast is fun. Jamie and I just had about a 5-minute conversation on where we sit as we talk to you and what it looks like in the frame. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Only because it's different than it's been in the past, and I'm trying to understand what you did.
I guess I moved the camera to a different position on the monitor.
I don't know. Maybe.
We are excited to be talking to you today. Here we are. We are going to be talking about something that we got into on our latest streaking run when we were out doing a 5-miler. We talked about time and timed streaks. And Jamie had a little bit of beef to pick with me as far as why I have an aversion to saying a streak should be something like do something for 5 minutes. We're going to talk about that today. We're excited to be with you. Hopefully you enjoy the conversation as well. Without further ado, let's start streaking.
All right. Ready to get going.
Let's go. So one of the things that you said to me, I think you started it out with, I still get bristled. Was it bristled?
Yes, bristled.
You said what was the bristle? But what was the? It was the bristle. But what had led up to that when you said I still get bristled by? Because you were talking about something with time. A timed streak.
We were talking to someone about streaking, and they said, "Oh, I know what it was." We were talking to our son about setting a streak of getting ready to go on his mission.
Yes.
And he was going to study
for 30 minutes.
For 30 minutes from the Preach My Gospel. And
every day.
And you had said, now that we were setting that as a challenge streak. So that's a different conversation. But you jumped in and were like, let's not put time around it. And I got a little bit.
Did I really sound like that? Was it really? Let's not put a time around it. Was it really that abrupt?
I don't know. I guess my perception was yes.
It probably was. So I'm just saying. Because you're right. I do have an allergic reaction to it.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Keep going.
So we were talking something this morning on the run about a streak, and somehow the conversation of putting a time around a streak came up. And I said, I still get bristled a little bit when you are so adamant that a streak can't have time in the process of setting the streak.
Right.
And
just to be clear.
Be clear.
Well, to be clear, to say, I'm going to read for at least 5 minutes every day.
Right. If someone were to bring that up as a streak, you would immediately come in and say, okay, well, let's not set a time around it. And so the conversation was great, because don't you love how sometimes with conversations, so here's what happened this morning, is several times we've had situations where someone has talked about us setting a streak and brought it up as a time, and you've come in and said something, and I've had feelings around that, but haven't had the chance to explore them.
Right.
And today on the run, I had the chance to explore and think for a little bit. Why do I have these feelings? Like, what is it that's bothersome to me? I know, and that's why I love the word bristled, because to me it's a visual representation of, I'm not angry, something's just not sitting right. I feel bristled. I feel a little bit bothered. And so you were great and were like, what is it that bothers you about a time streak?
And you know what's interesting? Just a little side note as far as our progression. And we've been married 34 years this year. Mm-hmm. August 3rd, 34 years, right?
Yep.
And these conversations have not always gone well.
No, they haven't.
And I will blame myself for this as far as the conversation not going well, because of either impatience or wanting to prove my point or wanting to get across. However, today, and what really we've learned as we grow together, is one of the things that I said to you is, I'd like to have a debate about this. Meaning that there was probably going to be conversation where we disagreed with one another, but we weren't going to be contentious about it. It was, we're going to express opinions and ideas differently. And I felt that's something that you and I have learned through time, is that if we're going to have a debate about something, it's like, call it out. Mm-hmm. Say that this is what it's going to be. And it's not that you're wrong and I'm right, or I'm right and you're wrong, but we have both opinions about it and we're going to discuss it. Mm-hmm. And therefore, today on the run, we discussed.
Another thing that was great is that through that discussion, I started in a certain place feeling that the reason I had these feelings was for a certain reason. And as the conversation progressed, I was able to recognize that, yes, my initial feelings and response to why I feel that way was somewhat correct, but it was also limited. Like there was a bigger picture to it. And through the discussion, I feel like we were able to come to a much better place about this concept of timed streaks. Mm-hmm. So my first initial...
Yeah, so let's get into it. As far as what is it that bristles you about time, about me saying I don't like time streaks?
Yes, my first initial response to it was, it feels like we're talking to someone about streaking. They're excited to set a streak, and they set a time streak, and then you come in and say something about time. And to me, it felt like you were saying, okay, that's not the right way to do it. That's wrong. And I know that you have a streak that has a timed component to it. And so I was frustrated because I was like, I don't want to come in and someone's excited to set a streak, and the first thing we do is say, no, that's not how you do it. So that was my initial feeling when you said, what is it about a timed streak that bristles you? Mm-hmm. So we talked about that for a little bit.
Well, and I think you should enumerate a little bit about what you feel when we're talking to people, because you said about the principle of streaking, and that whatever someone says is laughably small, it's their definition of laughably small. It's not my definition. It's not your definition. It's whoever has the streak. They choose what's laughably small. And I think what your point was, is you were saying, and if they choose 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes as their laughably simple, then that's their choice. I think, at least I feel like that's what you were trying to communicate.
That is something that I feel strongly about as we continue to learn about streaking and looking at it and being like, what is streaking? And what I've come to realize is I'm like, it's a methodology that helps you to embrace progress.
Yeah.
And I look at it and I think, having streaks in your life is a journey. It's a journey of self-improvement, but it's also a journey of self-understanding and recognizing what one person's laughably simple is not mine, or what used to be my laughably simple isn't my laughably simple anymore. Or, wow, that motivates a lot of people, but that totally doesn't work for me. Like understanding through the process what is going to work for you,
right,
to get you to accomplish the daily tasks that you want in your life, that help you to be disciplined, that help you to become the person you want to do. And embracing the whole thing as a journey of progression, not always, and that's what differentiates it from a goal, which is work hard, measure the goal, cross the finish line, accomplish the goal. Mm-hmm. Streaking can have goal components to it. In other words, that it can help you to accomplish your goals, but it's much more of a journey of embracing this opportunity to continually be progressing and learning more about yourself and about other people and what you can do to become the person that you want to be as you learn about yourself and as you learn about other people. So that was what I was,
right.
That was the whole conversation of why we teach principles. And so we got to talking, and I did bring up, I was like, you have a streak specifically of planking.
Right.
And it is to plank for 2 minutes every day.
But that's not the streak. But that's what you understood the streak to be.
That's what I see.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying. So what is the streak?
The streak is to plank for at least 10 breaths.
Okay, so it started off to plank for 10 breaths.
That is the streak.
But that's where you started.
Yeah.
And where you continue to do.
Right.
But I watch you every day, and you've set a timer.
No, I do. You're right. I set
phone.
A timer. I try to plank for at least 2 minutes, but I don't. However, if I don't get 2 minutes, the streak still counts as long as I do it for 10 seconds.
Okay. For 10 breaths.
Yeah, for 10 breaths. Sorry, not 10 seconds, but 10 breaths. Yeah.
Okay. So that was part of our discussion, was me understanding how that works. So my question to you was, you have a streak that from my perception is very centered on time, yet you have this aversion towards people setting a streak that is a timed streak. So explain, this is where you came in and explained why you have an aversion to a timed streak.
As I have gone throughout my life, one of the areas that I have used, or one of the phrases I've used as an excuse, and I'm curious if others have as too, is I don't have time. I don't have time to do this particular activity or to complete this particular task or project. I need to wait until I have time in order to do that. What I noticed very early on in our streaking journey, because it's simple to say, I'm going to read for at least 5 minutes every day. And I believe at that moment, it seems relatively simple. If we're talking about discipline number 1, make it laughably simple. The principle is to make it such that you are not inhibited by your brain's natural rejection response. You are looking at it and saying, I can get that done. And time seems to be the place that is easy to measure. It's easy to go to and look at and to say, I'm going to get this done because it's only 5 minutes. It's just 5 minutes.
Right.
Well, what if in your day, and this is one of the excuses that I come across and that I used, you don't seem to have 5 minutes. There's no 5 minutes that are available. You're just, from the minute you wake up to the minute you drop down into bed, you are occupied with things to do, or your time is taken up. Time is scheduled. What I found is that when I switch it from a time thing to I'm going to read at least one paragraph and measure it by activity, then the time doesn't matter. And it's amazing. I have always, quote unquote, found time to be able to do one paragraph. Because no longer am I looking for 5 minutes to read. I'm like, okay, one paragraph in a book is what I need to do in order to fulfill the streak requirement. The activity occupies the time, and the time is no longer the focus. And therefore, I don't have the excuse anymore of being able to say, well, I just don't have time for that. Because I have found, as far as reading a paragraph in a nonfiction book, especially in the world of our mobile devices, where all of our books can be on our mobile devices, I can do that almost anywhere. Waiting for food in a drive-through line, at Chance's swim meet, as we're sitting waiting for, we're in line at Disney and we were reading books.
Right, doing our streaks or.
I was doing something, but the activity was now the thing on which I was focused, and therefore did not need to worry about how much time it was occupying. Whereas, had I, with Disney, looked at it and said, well, I'm going to need 5 minutes to be able to read this, I don't think I ever would have been able to read. I wouldn't have done it. I could have, but I wouldn't have done it because I think I don't have the time. Time often is used like spending money. We spend time. What's weird is that the time is the same for everyone. No one can give you more time.
And that was one thing that is interesting, because I agree with you that we often look at, and what is the saying? Time is money. Like, we equate those things as being the same. But the truth is that literally every single person ever born is given the same amount of time on a daily basis. Now, right. I understand that none of us know, most of us don't know how long we're going to be alive.
Right.
And so in that sense, we are given different amounts of time. But on a day-to-day basis, when everybody goes from one day to the next day, they have the same amount of time in that day. It doesn't matter what time zone you're in. It doesn't matter your education level. It doesn't matter your financial level. Everybody has the exact same number of minutes in a day.
Yeah.
And even if those number of minutes are spent in more darkness than more light, or more light than more darkness, it doesn't change the fact
it's still
that
same
there was
minutes.
Still that many hours in a day. So it is phenomenal to look at and think that is the one thing that we all have the same amount of. So when we say I don't have time, the truth is everybody has the same amount. That you don't have it or don't have it. It is what it is. It's the same for everybody. And that's what I feel like you were saying is this. So what happens is we're looking at it like it's scheduled. And when you're saying, well, a timed streak gives the mindset that you need to schedule it. You need to find a scheduled time of 5 minutes to do this streak.
I actually hadn't thought of it in that way, but that's exactly right. Is once I put it, that's really good, because once I put it in that context, I'm going to do this thing for 5 minutes. Now I need to go find time in my schedule, 5 minutes to do that thing.
To do it.
Rather than I'm going to read a paragraph in a book.
And
not
with that,
you don't have to schedule any time.
You don't have to schedule it, but time can appear. Like there can all of a sudden be a moment that you're like, oh, I've got some time here. I can do this. The other thing that I thought was interesting is as we were on the walk this morning and talking about this thing where you're like, well, I don't have 5 minutes. I think there was a comedian that was talking about toaster waffles, not toaster waffles, Pop-Tarts.
Yes.
And how long it takes
Brian
to
Regan.
cook a Pop-Tart.
Or was it Jim Gaffigan?
I don't
know,
remember, but he's like,
anyway.
if you don't have 5 minutes to make a Pop-Tart, you need to re-examine your life. I thought of that as you were talking. We were like, if you don't have 5 minutes to do this. So there's a common philosophy out there that's like, if you don't have 5 minutes, you've got some time management issues. You got to figure it out. But the truth is that time is an interesting thing because okay, so for example, you're doing a plank for 2 minutes. I'm watching a show for 2 minutes. Those 2 minutes are not equal. Does that make sense? The exact same amount of time has passed, but you've lived that 2 minutes because you're planking, and I've been watching a show. It can go by without hardly even noticing it.
So let me say, I would say the 2 minutes are equal. It's still 2 minutes,
it's still
no matter
2
what.
minutes, yes.
But the value of what you do in that 2 minutes, the activity, the value of the activity is different.
The value, but also the perception.
Yeah.
So your perception of how quickly time is going is very different at that moment than my perception of how quickly time is going.
It is a 2 minute plank is a long time.
So that's what's interesting
Whereas,
about
3 shorts or 4 shorts, that's 2 minutes, not a very long time.
Not the same.
But it's still 2 minutes.
2 minutes, the same amount of time. So that was my thing when we were saying a time streak is that we can say, I don't have time.
Yeah.
But yet I can know what time I need to leave. And then at that time, I'm like, oh, wait, I need to grab this, or I'm just going to run to the bathroom real quick, or let me grab my purse real quick, or let me fill my water bottle real quick. And while I'm doing those things, time is still passing. Mm-hmm. So though I thought in my brain, I'm leaving at this time, by the time I get in the car, I'm like, I'm 10 minutes late. How am I 10 minutes late? Well, because I still took the time to go to the bathroom and fill the water bottle, and those things took
occupied time.
Yes,
absolutely.
But my perception was, I'm moving quick. It's going to be okay. Time shouldn't be moving. Does that make sense?
It does.
The other thing is, I can feel like, oh, I'm going to do this thing for a certain period of time and be very involved and notice that the time is going slow. Or how many kids talk about sitting in class and looking at the clock, waiting for that class to be over, and just thinking it is going so slow. Yet I think we've all experienced opening our phone to a social media website and then looking up and being like, oh my gosh, 15 minutes passed. I didn't even realize that time was passing. Like you got
into
me, this.
45 minutes have passed.
Exactly.
And it's like, what in the world did I just spend my time?
So our perception of saying I don't have 5 minutes is, I don't know that we can rely on perceptions of time.
Yeah.
We can rely on time passing. We can rely on the fact that everybody gets the same amount of time. We can rely on the fact that it moves at the same rate. Time moves at the same rate for everybody. But our perception of it is very different.
Little side note. Just this morning I was reading in the news that the Earth is going to spin faster on 3 days in the next month. On 3 days it will spin faster because of the positioning of the moon. Oh. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is obviously time is based on 24 hours. In other words, right, from midnight to midnight. It's on the rotation of the Earth. Guess how much faster it's going to spin? Just take a guess.
I have no idea.
Just any number. Just throw it out there. Because I was thinking, oh my goodness, are we going to lose like minutes, hours?
How much? So we're going to lose
milliseconds.
Milliseconds of time because it spins a little bit faster.
A little faster. Like 0.1 milliseconds faster or something like that. I was like, oh, I guess that's a lot faster.
So there you go. The perception of
time. I wanted to highlight something you were talking about. You said the phrase time management. And that is a catchphrase that is a lot of people want to manage their time, right? I mean, that is something that you've looked at, I've looked at, that we have calendars around. I mean, as you look throughout history, there have been individuals that are about managing your time.
Yes.
Now, what is the reason for managing your time? And here's one of the areas that I've thought a lot about is, am I really managing time, or am I managing activity that occupies time? That's one of the reasons why a streak, I look at it as it is activity based. It's not time based. It's the activity that I'm going to do. And that then will occupy a certain amount of time.
That is really good. The tricky thing is there are certain things that time has a place for. And now we're going off script. But I think about sleep.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that time isn't important. Don't hear that.
Okay.
Because I'm not at any time did I say that time is not important. Because our lives pass by.
Yes.
And time is being spent no matter what. Like this conversation right now is occupying time.
And I think
I think it's a valuable activity to occupy this amount of time. And so what I'm managing is my activities in order to fill time, but I'm not managing time per se. But at no point am I saying that time's not important, because time, for example, helps you and I to coordinate events. Mm-hmm. If you say, okay, we're going to be there at 7:00, then that helps us to coordinate. We know that we're going to be at that particular place when the hands on the clock hit 7:00.
Right.
That's important. But I may not be managing my life in that way. I may be looking at it and saying, I want to spend time with Jamie. We're going to have a date. We're going to meet up at 7:00. But I'm not looking at it saying, okay, I'm going to spend 2 hours with Jamie and ensure that, do you see what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's different. Mm-hmm. It's a slight perception change. But it's not that time's not important.
I like the way you said that, is that it's not that you're not going to, because why do people manage time? We manage time so that we can spend more of the commodity that doesn't change doing the things that we want to do.
Right.
If we manage it well, then we feel like, oh, I've got more quote unquote time to be doing this activity rather than this other activity that I don't enjoy as much. And now the time is gone and I can't do the activity that I do enjoy. So we manage the time. The perception is if I manage the time, then I can do more of the activity that I want, which has a place, absolutely has a place.
True.
I also feel like what you're saying is that there is a place also for a mindset to recognize that I can find more joy in the activities that I am doing, and I can put activities in places that maybe I wouldn't have recognized there was time for them there.
Yeah.
And that will...
See, that's really good. I can put activities in places where I didn't think I had the time. And that only happens because I'm focused on the activity, not distracted by the perception of time. Right.
Because that's what I think it is. It's not that we don't have time. And that's why it was profound to me to be like, everybody has the same amount. Nobody has more time than anybody else.
Can't buy it, can't give it away.
Can't buy it,
you
no.
can't get more, I can't get more. It's the same.
Now, you can have money that provides the opportunity for other people to do things that you don't have to do, that now gives you the ability to spend that time doing different activities. Like, so you can, True. Those things are real. That's not real. But there's also this perception of understanding that how I view time and the idea of having it or not having it. So when you talk about setting a streak that's a time streak, you're saying, I want to take away the perception that I need to find time for this and add to it, this activity is valuable. I will do this activity.
Yeah.
I'm not always sure where the time will be. And there are some things that I look at and I'm like, yes,
but
you
I think
do
that goes back
them.
to one of the things that you were saying as far as, and I want to capture it again. We'll have to go back and listen if we can't remember, but because it was like 3 minutes ago where you said that I can do things where otherwise I didn't think I could because I was doing something different. I can do something. How did you say it?
I can do something where I didn't think I would have time to do it.
Yeah.
That something has happened in your life.
So I think of most recently when we went to Disneyland. Mm-hmm. We were in line for hours.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is not one, well, we were in one line for hours, Rise of the Resistance. We were in that line for quite a while. And in that line, I reviewed a vocabulary word. I read a nonfiction book. I read a fiction book. We reviewed things with the boys. All of these are streaks that we had that were Now we wouldn't have thought that we could do it at that point, but now we did because we had been intentional and deliberate about what it was that we were going to do. How many, I just look at it. So some of the people in line were playing that game where you put your phone on your head.
Yes.
And there's a word on the phone.
Yes.
And
Which
everyone
looked
tries
really
to describe
fun.
what it is.
That
Yeah.
was
And it looked fun. Well, what I thought about is that's cool. They're renewing a relationship.
Yeah.
They're getting closer with one another. If I have a streak to strengthen a relationship or connect, actually my streak is to connect with with at least one of my children every day. If I have that and I'm conscious and deliberate about it, then I'm going to make conscious effort in that line that is occupying time to do an activity that is more valuable than to go to my phone and scroll through reels.
Right. So you are being more intentional about where that time is being spent.
Right. Exactly. One more thing. Sorry. Yes. So you talked about planking. So what the example that you brought up, you said, well, you could spend 2 minutes planking and you would be on the couch spending 2 minutes on your phone. Well, now what I do is I plank and I watch shorts while I'm planking.
To try and capitalize on that feeling of time disappearing.
Yes.
Can I get sucked into this social media zone?
It works. It works.
That's great.
I was bringing that up to your brother and he said, well, that's how I'm going to deal with social media with my children is like, hey, you can watch as many shorts as you want while you're planking.
While you're planking. Oh, that's great. I'm glad that it works. That's awesome.
It is. It does. It's amazing. I'd love to, and I'm sure there's a whole bunch of brain science out there about how, because seriously, when I started doing it that way, now it's like 2:20 goes by, 2:30 goes by, and I look at my stopwatch and I'm like, oh, that's been a lot of time that has passed, but I'm not focused now on how much time. When I was doing it before, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try and get 2 minutes in. The streak again is 10 breaths. I wanted to do 2 minutes. 2 minutes felt forever.
And that was part of why I bristled when we would talk about this, is because you would often say, well, when you set a timed streak, you focus on the time and not the activity. And I'm like, that's exactly what you're doing when you plank for 2 minutes, is you are just waiting for that time to go by.
Yeah.
You're not focusing on a good plank. You're focusing on the time going by. But I loved that what we came to, and this is kind of how I wanted to tie everything up in a bow, is recognizing that the important thing that we're talking about. So when somebody comes and wants to set a timed streak,
a streak that when you say a timed streak, it's
I'm going to write in my journal for 5 minutes.
Okay.
I want to be able to have the vocabulary and the ability to explain that is not a red light streak. That is not something that I would look at and be like, no, don't do it that way. But it is definitely a hard yellow. And being able to explain that...
I love that. A hard yellow.
It's a hard yellow. In other words, what's a hard yellow? It might turn... You don't know how long
hard
you're going to...
stop. It's a hard slow down.
And why is
that? Take
a
look at this for just a minute.
Because what we would want to be able to communicate is that, are you allowing the time to be something that becomes the focus? So now... finding the time could be a barrier. Or let's say you have a writing in your journal moment where you're like, I'm tapped. Like, I've spent my day. I can't even think of things to write for 5 minutes. Now you're trapped in this feeling of like, I have to write for 5 minutes. That seems like a long time. Or another one where you get done with 5 minutes. You're like, oh, I want to write more, but I guess I've done it. So I should just do the 5 minutes. Like, it doesn't give you the opportunity to expand and contract. And I think that expanding and contracting is important, and focusing on the activity allows you some of that expand and contract, and is able to acknowledge that our perception of time is not always the best thing to place a streak upon.
I'll give you one more just as we finish up here. So this morning, I was telling Jamie about where I'm studying right now in the scriptures. And my streak is to read at least one verse of scripture every day. And I told her about the verse that I was reading, and she's like, are you still on that verse? And what is interesting about that is quantity of something, like for example, reading a number of verses or spending an amount of time, is easy to measure. It's more difficult to measure the study and the intentionality that goes into something, which is one of the reasons why also I look at the activity. So in wrapping all this up, now has your perception changed? Do you get bristled now, or is it now that we've discussed it in such a way that you understand and I understand, and there's a new level of understanding around it? Or, I mean, because if someone were to set or to say, I'm going to do this for 5 minutes, this for 15 minutes, this one for 20 minutes, this one for 30 minutes.
I would do a hard yellow. I would have a caution button on that one for sure, and say
mine would be a hard stop.
Yours would be a hard stop for all of the and maybe if all of their streaks were timed streaks, I would probably put a hard stop on that, because what you're dealing with is perception. And the perception that's being communicated when you set 3, 4, 5 streaks that are all, I'm going to do this for this much time, I'm going to do this for this much time, I'm going to do this for this much time, is that your day has to go in such a way that you've got the time to give that.
Yeah.
And that is exactly a fundamental thing of what streaking is changing, is it's changing the perception from I need to give this quality time to I'm just going to keep doing the activity. I'm just going to keep, and that over time, that quality will improve because I'm consistently giving it what it needs.
And I believe that the quality will improve, and there are some times where that activity will occupy a whole bunch of time, and other times where it won't.
Right. And you're giving yourself the latitude for that.
Because the consistency is key. The effort is in the consistency, which is the whole idea behind streaking. So
the changing from looking at it from a timed set is a mind shift change. That's what we're trying to communicate, is that it's a mind shift change from the amount of time I spend doing something is what denotes the quality of it, to it's the activity that denotes the quality. Just the fact that you're doing that activity consistently is what's important, not that you're spending time.
Absolutely.
Because the perception of time and how we spend it varies from day to day, hour to hour, activity to activity.
Yeah, true. Thanks so much for spending time with us today. We certainly appreciate it. Hopefully this podcast has been beneficial for you. Jami and I have loved the conversation, and we also love hearing from you. If there's anything that you want to ask about, or comments, thoughts, please email us. Jeffery, Jeffery, at mystreaksapp.com, or
Jami, Jami, at mystreaksapp.com.
Until we talk together again, we hope that you have a marvelous, fantastic, wonderful day, and as always,
keep streaking.